Welcome to this special episode of Decoding Gender Insights from Thought Leaders. Population First is observing the 16 days of activism against gender based violence, a global campaign from November 25th to December 10th, with a 16-part podcast series that delves into the intersection of gender and critical social issues. Since inception in 2005, Population First has focused on challenging the gendered attitudes that devalue girls and women, fuel discrimination, and perpetuate gender-based violence. Workplace safety is a major concern for women in India as societal norms, gender biases, and weak implementation of laws like the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013, prevention, prohibition, and redressal leave many vulnerable, especially in informal sectors. Fear of retaliation, stigma, and lack of awareness deter reporting of misconduct. Unsafe workplaces limit women's workforce participation and hinder gender equality. Stricter enforcement of laws, gender sensitization programs, and fostering a culture of respect are vital for ensuring safety, promoting inclusivity, and driving sustainable development. Joining us are two dynamic voices on the subject. Consultant with UNFPA, Advocate Ujjwala Kadrikar is a specialist in human rights and gender, while Ladli Awardee Revati Lal is an independent journalist, filmmaker, and activist who has authored The Anatomy of Hate, an account of the perpetrators of the 2002 Gujarat violence, and has founded the Sarfaroshi Foundation, an Uttar Pradesh-based human rights organization. Over to both of you.
So, Revati, would you like to begin?
Why don't you start, Ujjwala? Because it's always good to get the boundaries, to set the boundaries, because sexuality and the workplace and crimes to do with women and gender at the workplace, or all genders at the workplace, should begin with setting the boundaries, and that's best done by people who know the boundaries. I'm one of those who breaks boundaries.
Yeah. So, Revati, talking about the safety of women, I always speak from being a lawyer, I always feel, that how the most fundamental rights of women can be really taken care of, be it at home, at workplace, or even in public spaces. This is where I come from, and I feel women's, when it comes to even workplace safety, what we have to really see in the putting them in the framework of fundamental rights to equality, non-discrimination, equal opportunities, and dignity. Work with dignity. Freedom of expression, everything. Now, if you really go to see, I have been working on this issue since the inception, not only just the inception of the law, but even the Vishaka guidelines. Been on many committees and working on this issue for so long. And absolute, the cases that I have been seeing is absolutely there is violation of fundamental rights, And this is where I feel, and even to recognize, even for a company or an organization to recognize, because when you see sexual harassment, you are looking only at the woman, you are looking at the survivor who has faced violence. But I am personally of the opinion that it is not just about her, it is of the entire women mass, just not belonging to that organization. And when it comes to, I feel it is more to do with her dignity. It is more to do her own boundary that you said, and which is her own perspective. How do you look at it, Because Supreme Court way back in 1997 has come out with this concepts of intent versus impact, So, and it very categorically has stated, the impact of sexual harassment on the woman is most imperative than the intent of the perpetrator. The first defense the perpetrator might take is, I never wanted to do any harm to her. I never even recognized that this was sexual harassment, because this is how I've been behaving with all my colleagues in my entire work life, So I never knew, that this is generally the defense that I see in most of the cases, And coming from, I always, because I conduct training, so I always ask this question, uh, a woman coming to work, she's not here to get your compliments, whether you're looking beautiful, this color suits you, or what do you do after work. I mean, you may appreciate her, you may acknowledge her for the work that she's doing, but you need not be personal with her. And setting boundaries is very important. How that can be conveyed at the workplace is something very important. To me, even women who are actually speaking out, I mean, the law introduced hostile work environment. The law introduced quid pro quo in the act. But if you really go to see hostile work environment, and this is so prevalent in all the cases that I see, it's very unfortunate. The moment woman is reporting, the law has given stipulated timelines, for them to report within 3 months. But even today, I see cases are coming after 1 year. Cases are coming after yes, 6 months to 1 year. Can the delay be condoned? These are some of the issues that even I am facing on day-to-day basis. The kind of cases that I'm seeing. Secondly, I also see how do you really define workplace? Because thanks to our internet, thanks to because virtually we are connected, throughout the day. It is just not 9 to 5 job, but all the time you are connected either on the WhatsApp, you have official WhatsApp, you are all the time connected on the email, so virtually you are connected as colleagues. So in the given scenario, how do you really extend your workplace? Even your meeting outside your working hours, are you still colleagues or you are meeting as two known persons? So these are some of because lately I have been getting this kind of cases also. So for me, there are many challenges that I'm at least coming across. And I feel as an IC member, as an external member, I do my best to not justice per se, but yes, I do my best in the cases that come to us. And at the same time, the respondent's rights also needs to be protected. He also needs to be given equal opportunities. So this is what I am actually looking at, But there are many challenges even for the companies to take up matters, constituting IC, internal committee. So they feel the need only if there is a case. And there are many companies who go without external members. So these are the challenges that I'm seeing. So what I see during Vishaka guidelines and what I see when the law is in place, I don't think much has changed. Though it has been a decade now that the law is in place, So Vishaka guidelines, yes, because it was a guidelines, no one was taking it seriously. But now with the act being enacted, yes, the companies, I'm definitely seeing that the private sector has definitely taken it up very seriously. That is, they have constituted the IC, they are conducting awareness programs, But I don't see the same scenario in the government sector. So, I mean, this is what, yes, I think this is what I feel about the workplace safety is definitely a challenge for a woman if you're not protected, if you're not allowed. Because I feel workplace is one place where we spend the quality time of our day. And if in that time, and you're most constructive, you're working from 10 to 5, you're most constructive, you're most productive. And when, if you're not given those conducive atmosphere, that kind of a conducive atmosphere to work, where your dignity is at stake, where you're not able to express yourself, then, again, there is a thin line between administrative issues and sexual harassment at workplace, So there can be a trigger, some administrative harassment can turn into a sexual harassment or vice versa.
Yes, I want to look at it from the point of view of an end user, the opposite end of the spectrum from you, Ujjwala, because exactly for the same reasons, what do women who are present in the workspace face? So, as a journalist, I've tracked many of these issues. I've left my job over one such issue at the Helka magazine. I've also, before that and since then, advocated for actually nuance and for not just thinking about the black and white, but for thinking of real situations which are often in the gray area. Most of us operate in the gray area, and talking about the gray area is a way of contextualizing this. And I think that is important. So I'll just give a few examples. Um, you know, what happens when you take up a complaint, or when let's say you've been harassed at the workplace. So I'm giving you an example that happened with me when I've been a journalist, and I was in a large office, large organization, and I was harassed. A colleague put his hand down my shirt and caught hold of my breasts, and I had to physically kind of tackle him to get with one hand and try to open the sliding door of the edit suite I was in, editing a video, to get out of that space. And it took me a day to think about whether I wanted to complain about him or not. So, often the first starting point, we make this black and white. Why didn't someone complain? Shouldn't she have complained? The choice and the agency should be with the person, the man, woman, or trans person who is facing harassment, because sometimes it's not only about complaining, it's about sometimes wanting to not make that, in my head, I was thinking, I went home and I talked to my parents about it. At that time, I was, I think, 23 or something. And I said, I don't want this to become a thing. If this person is, there's a zero tolerance policy for sexual harassment at the place I was in. So I felt that if this man loses his job, then I will end up carrying that guilt with me for that. And I don't want to carry that, because then I'll keep going back to that scenario in my head. And I don't want to. I want to forget about this scenario. So then I debated this, and I brought it up with my immediate boss, who then brought it up with who was a woman, who brought it up with a boss above her, who was also a woman. And that woman decided to call me and this person to her office, and made both of us say, and tells this boy, oh, you've come from a small town to a big city, and sometimes when you come to a big city, you don't know the difference between, like, he started by, like, it was an early morning shift. We work very odd hours in television. So he was like doing like a head massage type thing. So I said, oh, very nice. I didn't realize that was going to go somewhere else. So she says, you didn't set the boundaries. You're a big city person. He didn't understand the difference. So poor chap. So after dealing with the harassment, I had to deal with him being made the poor chap for coming from a small town. And then I had the option of taking this further. I chose not to, because I told myself, okay, if I take this further, this person is going to lose his job, and then I don't want this at my door. So one part of the story that we don't talk about is letting the woman have the agency to decide what she wants to do in a particular scenario. It might also be okay, and this is an area that makes a lot of people uncomfortable to talk about, which is, I might not want to do the prescribed thing. I might want to tell the guy, I don't want to deal with you, talk to you. I never want to see you. And I want you to be invisible in my landscape. I don't want you to exist. So there are various ways in which I can make you not exist. And complaining need not necessarily be the only option. But that, of course, also depends on how much power and agency you have in your life, in your organization, in your social space, and how safe you are overall also. Then there's the part of the question, or the part of the story that is completely or almost completely absent from our landscape of talking about sexual harassment at the workplace, and that is the rural landscape and the semi-urban landscape. There's a story, because I work now and live in a small district in India called Shamli in Uttar Pradesh. And just this afternoon, one of our community leaders was talking to us in our office, and she was saying that in the village, and this has actually been taken up by the superintendent of the police, it's in the papers, it's in the Business Standard, it's in various other newspapers. where in one village, a young kid, a young girl of about 8 years old, is being sold by her own aunt to various people. And apparently, this person, someone in the family, this is an allegation, so I don't know the veracity of it yet. But I'm just drawing out a scenario where, for work, this woman has been turned into an object where other people are made. Now, in one of the scenarios that has been presented to me today, and this has happened, this I've heard of other such cases, which complicates the scenario, where she's been made to lie naked with another young boy who's also a minor. And that minor's family has been told, look, these are naked pictures of your son lying on top of this woman. Now he has raped her. Please give us 7 lakh rupees to not file a case. In this scenario, if this is presented to a law officer or a mediation person or someone under the Vishaka guidelines, how does that person determine what really happened? And whose fault? What if it's the girl's family's own fault? And how do they take away that person from that scenario? There are minors who are being made to work for sex in order to get paid their wages for working in a field. There are stories like that. Then there are stories of, if your workplace is a sugarcane field or if your workplace is a brick kiln, there are no bathrooms there. So where do you go to pee? Or do you not pee for 8 hours? And when you go to pee in the open, men think this is open provocation, especially if you come from a caste that is socially discriminated against, or a religion which is now increasingly being seen as a pariah of the state. So even if the law officers come from a caste that feels like also subjecting you to more harassment, then where do your systems of redressal come from? So the actual, for me, I think for the end user, looking at it from the point of view of the end user, I think the discussion has to go out of this law enforcement rule book space and the social engagement space. Are we creating spaces as women, as empowered people, for less empowered people to become empowered? How are we enabling them to talk? How are we enabling them to be able to cohabit with other women and be safer in their villages, in their workspaces, in the field, in the factory, in the brick kiln, on a bus, where they are going to the workplace? So in all of these scenarios, it is not, I think the discussion has to go far beyond just the rules of harassment, but to being able to do something when you have been harassed. And something could be a long list of things, not only about complaining, but about making the other side invisible in your head and in your social landscape.
What you said, yes, these are some of the areas which we really need to look at. And it's very unfortunate. We have been talking about various scenarios. Now, being a lawyer, I know, how the age-wise, everything, age-wise, harassment-wise, everything is compartmentalized in the books of law. So if it is a minor child, be it a boy or a girl, either in the whether they are being harassed or they are the harassers, the POCSO Act will apply.
Yes.
Coming from there, I also feel, because I have been also conducting this. What I essentially feel is there has to be a lot of awareness building that needs to be done. You have to stand for it. It's not just about complaining, even to recognize that I am being harassed, that I am being violated. I think that is also because everyone, especially women coming from a very, grassroots level, even that recognition, that I am being harassed, most women I have seen, working in the fields or working in NGOs also, they don't even, because we have internalized it so much, and we feel it's a normal behavior. And when they only tend to complain when they feel it is an abnormal behavior and they cannot accept it. So how are they even walking this journey? For them, all this is very essential, to understand. So most women like whom I have interacted, even at the grassroots level, in the villages, and they feel, कि मैडम ये तो हमारे साथ रोज होता है, लेकिन हमको कभी पता नहीं था कि ये सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट है। ये हमको रोज बोले जाते हैं कि रात को तुम कितने बजे सोई हो, क्या खा के सोती हो, कैसे तुम्हारा सेक्स लाइफ कैसे है। तो ये इतनी आम बात होती है। द वे दे जनरली द कॉन्वर्जेशन दैट even happens in the workplaces, जहाँ पे आपका the contractor, the मुकादम, the way they talk, you are so women, unless you are made aware of your rights, I feel I come from that school of thought, unless you are made aware of your right, unless, and even only if it is me who believes in myself and feels that I am being harassed, and I need to talk about it. These are the only sections, I think, a fraction of women who are coming forward and complaining. See, even today, after a decade of this law, there are just handful of cases who are getting reported, and for them, it's a challenging journey. It's not easy. It's not easy for women to complain. Now, any workplace for that matter, or any spaces that we are talking about, which is unsafe for women. You said about bus. Where would the woman go if she is harassed in the bus? Where will she go? Definitely she will have to go to the police station. Or if it is a conductor who is harassing her, she will have to go to his workplace. So do women even know the places where she has to actually go and complain? And do you think our system is very welcoming to the survivors of violence? Do you think, even if it, for that matter, even companies or organizations or any sectors that we talk about, do you think they are seen as troublemakers? And coming from there, from making them, labeling them as troublemakers, to actually seeing them as a complainant, to actually seeing them as a survivor of violence, and then getting into inquiring into the complaint, this is what I generally believe in. And complaining is definitely, it is her agency. Unless she complains, no one can take action. No one can take action on her behalf. So unless she has to come forward and complain. We saw in Me Too campaign. So much cognizance was taken in many. Even what the Kerala report said. Kerala, the entire media company was somewhere induced into it. So where we are talking about, when we are talking about safety, I always ask this question in all my trainings. Which is the safest place for women in our country? So there will be few hands which will come up and say, home. And to my surprise, I'm really taken by surprise when people don't say workplace is a safe place. While if you really see, the complaint is just on the surface. I mean, we really don't need to even scratch this. That's what I'm trying to say. There is no insight to workplace harassment. So it is either workplace, either it is your home which is safe, or a public space. But even men don't feel. Even men don't feel that home is the safest place for women. So today we have reached that stage. So at least there is a recognition. What I want to actually convey is there is a recognition that something is not right going on with me, and this is when women are voicing out. That's what I'm saying. Even in the law, law has some redressal mechanisms, but are these redressal mechanisms really effective? Be it internal committee or the local committee. I mean, you can have a word on that, And
I think the redressal mechanisms have to do with, civil society, the media, the kind of activism that we engage in. Is it real, or is it like sitting behind a laptop and coming up with rules? Studying the field is one thing, but living in the field is another thing. And situating yourself on the ground gives a very, very different perspective on how to actually make situations equal, so that in the workplace, the reason the woman doesn't complain, I feel, at least in the rural and semi-urban spaces that I live in currently, has very not so much to do with lack of awareness, because they're very aware that they have been violated, or that their rights have been taken away from them, their dignity has been taken away from them. But I think they don't see the point in complaining because the power structures are weighed against them. So actually, the course correction has to be at changing the power structure in order for the law to become operational. The law is written by middle class people who think that everybody can access the power structure because they can. but even they can't often. And so recognizing what it will take to make the shift the balance in a workplace is where, let's say, the people at the top of the workplace, if they, for instance, the person who comes to clean the toilets should be able to sit at the same table. She should be able to sit at the same table as the CEO or the head of the organization, and everybody eats together. So there is some power there where you say, okay, how's your day been? Is your diabetes under control? Let's go for your grandson's birthday. Equally as you would with anyone else. It shouldn't be dependent on your salary or your money. In that case, that person will have a voice. If that person has a voice, then the chances of them speaking up when they're harassed are greater. And even though there's a hierarchy in the organization, there is some semblance of being able to speak across hierarchies. And the reason why most of our sexual harassment complaints do not come to the surface is because people are not recognizing that this is a function of this hierarchy. And in the workplace, non-hierarchical actions go a very long way in being able to give people a voice. So one is, outside of just Vishaka, I think these things need to become part of the conversation. How do you break the hierarchy? How do you allow the person who cleans? What is the workplace of the person who cleans the street? That is her workplace.
I feel, since we are talking about workplace safety, I feel since we have an act in place, a POSH Act in place, what I really see is the internal committee and the local committee really needs to be strengthened. And local committee is still not, despite the decade, local committee is still not visible, So that they have to be strengthened, they have to be empowered to take so much cognizance of such matters, When women don't want to go to the police station, because you have an internal redressal mechanism in place. I also feel, there's some teeth has to be given to the report of all this internal committee and the local committee, It's not in, women do not have that kind of a money or the energy, to go to High Court and Supreme Court. I don't want these cases, sexual harassment cases. I am strongly of the opinion that they should not reach High Court and lower court, and the lower judiciary and the internal and the local committee should do their best in handling these cases. This is what I feel. Yeah.
I would like to say in summation that people writing about this and people acting, activists and the media need to be on the ground, and also offices need to talk about non-hierarchical measures to make the weakest link in the gender chain in their office empowered enough to sit across the same table as the most at the apex, the person at the apex. Break hierarchies. If you don't break hierarchies, you cannot alter gender violence. So it has to start with breaking hierarchies at the workplace or anywhere else, and recognizing that there are many places not listed in the workplace at all, like the roads that are being cleaned, the brick kilns, where the flyovers that are being built.
These are all in the unorganized sector. They all will come under the unorganized. See, wherever the law is very clear, wherever there is more than 10 people working, there has to be an internal committee. Wherever in an unorganized sector, it is less than 10 people, So even a domestic maid is covered under the act,
Yes.
So for her, the home is any home
is the
workplace for.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So similarly for people working.
But where is the breaking of hierarchy? So the breaking of hierarchy has to do with societal norms. And the middle class has to see its own complicity in this violence and not keep blaming it on the other. If the middle class learns to accept its own duplicity, its own need to hold on to petty hierarchies, then we have a starting point for an honest conversation. And the other thing is contextualizing each case. That the nuance is missing in these conversations. It's always becoming a hard line. Sometimes the gray areas need to be left gray, and there need to be other modes of solving and resolving these problems outside of just black and white, him or her, or she and she. It can also be, there can also be mediation. There can also be we don't know what's happened, or we don't want to deal with this in the court. There are various other options, and women should be allowed all, and not just women, but whoever is at the receiving end of this hierarchy should be able to have enough agency to exercise all the various options and not have that taken out of their hands, as is often the case.
Thank you, Ujjwala Kadrikar and Revti Lal, for this engaging and thought-provoking discussion on gender and workplace safety. Viewers may share their reactions, queries, and observation in the comments section below. Please watch all the episodes and initiate gender conversations with your family, friends, colleagues, and community members.